இது பக்திக்கான விதை என்று புரிய வந்தது. குருவை நாடி சென்றீரு, குழப்பம் தெளிந்து வந்தீரு. பக்தி சித்தாந்த சரஸ்வதி சீடரானீரே, சீடரானீரே. குருவின் வார்த்தை வாழ்வில் தாக்கமானதே. அவர் கண்ட கனவு புத்தக பதிப்பு நோக்கமானதே. குருவின் ஆணைக்கு இணங்க அயல் நாடுகள் சென்றீர். அங்கு கண்ட மனிதர்கள் மனதை கிருஷ்ண உணர்வால் வென்றீர். மகாத்மாவாய் வந்தீரே.
Presentation is called the overview of Madhurya Kadambini. Madhurya Kadambini is a book which is a seminal book written by Srila Visvanatha Chakravarti Thakura. Kadambini refers to the Kadamba tree, and Madhurya means the fruit of that tree is Madhurya Rasa, or sweet exchange of rasa with Sri Krishna. Madhurya Kadambini is unique because it describes the stages of bhakti from śraddhā to Prema, as the title goes. So let's dive deep into it. So let's start with the definition of pure devotional service, which is very popular definition given by Srila Rupa Goswami. Anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karma adi anavritam anukulyena Krishna anushilanam bhaktir uttama. When first class devotional service develops, one must be devoid of all material desires. So here what it means is that Anyabhilashita shunyam means that my desire will be to please Sri Krishna. Apart from that, I should not have any other desire. And my happiness will come from the happiness of Sri Krishna. Knowledge obtained by monastic philosophy and fruit of action. The devotee must constantly serve Krishna favorably as Krishna desires. That's the main part of the definition. Anukulyena Krishna anushilanam bhaktir uttama. When all the actions of my senses, my words, my mind, my thoughts are pleasing to Krishna, that is called Shuddha Bhakti. It should be free from other desires for sense gratification, and should not be covered by jnana and karma. Now, jnana and karma is important, but it should not cover bhakti. Let's say I work a job or I have a family, but if I can keep Krishna in the center, if I can maintain a peaceful life, keep Krishna in the center, do my sadhana, make my home a temple of Krishna, and also offer some of the fruits of my work to service of Sri Krishna, then my work doesn't cover bhakti. But if my work is such that I'm not able to do any sadhana, I'm not able to, serve Sri Krishna, then I may have to make some changes. So that's the definition of pure devotional service. So first, let's start with Shraddha. What does pure devotional Shraddha or faith means? Faith actually is required for anything. Anything requires faith. So similarly, the spiritual life, pure devotional spiritual life, begins with faith. And that faith has three characteristics. Number one, a devotee must have firm faith in the conclusion of the scriptures. And then that means that he has to read the scriptures, and he should know, what the scriptures say. And our basic scriptures in the process of Bhakti Yoga, in the theology of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, is Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Brahma Samhita, Nectar of Instruction, and Nectar of Devotion. Nectar of Instruction is like a handbook of Bhakti. Nectar of Devotion is, you can say, an ABCD of Rasa, ABCD or grammar of Rasa. It is followed by a sequel called Ujjwal Nilamani. And those two books are the ABCDs of Rasa. And firm faith in the conclusion of the scriptures. There is an understanding in our philosophy, in our theology, that Shastra Yonitvat, which is the third words of the Vedanta Sutra, which means that we accept scriptures as the ultimate conclusion. There are other ways of ascertaining truth, but we accept the conclusion of the scriptures as truth and having a firm faith in the conclusion of scriptures. Now, how would you know that one has firm faith in the conclusion of the scriptures? One attentively follow the process of devotion with enthusiasm and determination. If that one characteristic is there, one should know that one person has developed firm faith in the conclusion of the scriptures. And one of the definitions of Shraddha is Krishna Bhakti Karile Sarva Karma Krita Hoy. By following Krishna Bhakti, all duties are accomplished. And karma and jnana support bhakti, but they do not cover it. So, yes, I may have to maintain a family, do a job, serve my parents, pay my taxes, but they do not cover bhakti, they support bhakti, they facilitate bhakti. So, that is called pure devotional Shraddha. Now, after Shraddha, the second phase is Sadhu Sangha. So Shraddha, we have understood, having firm faith in the conclusion of scriptures, acting on the conclusion of scriptures with enthusiasm and determination. And lastly, knowing that by doing Krishna Bhakti, all of the duties and all of my responsibilities are automatically accomplished. Then comes Sadhu Sangha, the second stage. And Sadhu Sangha entails accepting the shelter of a spiritual master. Now, in ISKCON or in Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition we accept Srila Prabhupada as our founder Acharya, we accept him as our Shiksha Guru, as our Param Shiksha Guru. And then after reading his books, following the methodology of bhakti he has given us, after a few years, if we feel the need for further guidance or personal relationship with an advanced devotee of Krishna, then we may take shelter of a spiritual master in his tradition. And then eventually we take Diksha after some time, after accepting the shelter and making sure that this person can guide me and I made the right choice. One takes Diksha, one display obedience to the order of the spiritual master, and then the spiritual master teaches one how to follow in the footsteps of the previous teachers who are called acharyas. So one may have practical questions of how to live one's life, um, like that, and then ultimately real sadhu sangha means a lifetime of inquiry and service. And sadhu accepts in many it comes in many form. He comes as diksha guru, he comes as shiksha guru, he may come as a devotee who's more advanced than us, whom we can learn something. But anybody who teaches us is a guru, is a spiritual master. So lifetime of inquiry and humble service is the essence of sadhu sangha. And after coming in touch with sadhus, one begins this process called bhajana kriya. Bhajana means chanting or sadhana. Kriya means activities of bhakti. And bhajana kriya is divided into two stages. The first stage is called the anisthita or unsteady. This word nishtha means steady. Anisthita means unsteady bhajana kriya. And in Anisthita Bhajan Kriya, there are our acharyas, especially Visvanatha Chakravarti Thakura, has described 6 stages. First is called Uttama. There is a period of initial enthusiasm. So a new devotee, he starts chanting. He thinks that he has become adept at chanting and he has become a bhajananandi. Or somebody reads Bhagavad Gita and he thinks he has become a scholar or he has become a very advanced devotee. This period lasts in the beginning for a few years. But because there is anarthas in the heart, this period doesn't last for a very long time. And soon a devotee realizes that he kind of waxes between thick and thin. Some days his bhakti, his spiritual practices are very good. Some days they're not so good. Some moons his spiritual practice is very strong. Sometimes it's not. He also vacillates and oscillates between what is called as vyuda vikalpa, between path of progressive enjoyment versus detachment. So he thinks, sometimes he thinks I'll be renounced, I'll go to Vrindavan, or I will live in a holy temple, or I might join the ashram. Or sometimes he think, I'm young, I should complete my education, I should get a job, I should work, I should get married, I should have children. Then when he gets married, he doesn't know, should I marry a devotee? Should I marry somebody who's, who's not so devotional? So there is always this vacillation between progressive enjoyment versus progressive renunciation. And then there is this battle with senses, Vishaya Sangara. Although I know spiritual life is good for me and Krishna consciousness is good for me, and having awakened faith in the narration of glories of Sri Krishna, one is still not able to give up sense gratification. That is called Vishaya Sangara. And Niyamakshana is inability to follow spiritual practice, meaning he may take vows from today, I will chant so many rounds, or I will not criticize anybody, or I will not do gossip, or I will not waste my time. But he's unable to follow those vows he makes. And finally, as one advances in bhakti, some name, fame, pratishtha, some prestige may come, some material allurements may come, and he begins to delight in those. And they are delighting in the weeds of bhakti. It's not the actual bhakti tree, bhakti creeper, but it's the things which are around bhakti. It's called Taranga Rangini. So the reason why one is unsteady in his bhajana kriya is because of the state of anarthas in the heart. And the next trait, as he continues to do bhajan, as he continues to practice bhakti, is called anartha nivritti. Um, and what are the anarthas in the heart? They are divided into four basic categories. The first is called tattva vibrama, which basically means ignorance of truth. Tattva means truth, vibrama means ignorance. Tattva Vibrama. We will look at Tattva Vibrama in more detail. Aparadh means actually mistakes which one commits while performing bhakti. Asat Trishna. Asat Trishna means, Asat means things which are not permanent, which are not eternal, hankering for them. And they arise from previous pious activities. And then there is Hridaya Daurabalyam, weakness of the heart. Hridaya means heart, Daurabalyam means weakness, which arise from previous sinful activities. So these are the four basic categories of anarthas. Now we look at tattva vibrama. Vibrama means illusion about one's own identity. One should know that one is an eternal servant of Krishna. But in this material world, we have so many designations. I'm black, I'm white, I'm man, I'm woman. One identifies with the body, one identifies with the mind, one identifies with the vagaries and of ups and downs of one's nature. So it's called illusion about one's own identity. Then illusion about the Supreme Lord. Who's God? What is my relationship with Him? Illusion about that. Illusion about the process of sadhana bhakti and prema bhakti. What exactly I need to do? What is sadhana bhakti? What is bhava bhakti? What is prema bhakti? And then illusion regarding subjects unfavorable to Krishna consciousness, also called Maya, to not be very careful about illusory energy of the Lord and to embrace an illusory energy of the Lord while still trying to practice bhakti. It's called Tattva Vibhrama. Second is aparadh. Aparadh means one which is opposed to Radharani. Radharani is the internal energy of the Lord which pleases the Lord. Aparadh means something which does not please the Lord. And aparadh are divided into four categories: offenses to the name, which have further 10 divisions: offenses to the form of the Lord. Nectar of Devotion describes 35 offenses to the form of the Lord. Offenses to devotees, Vaishnava Aparadha, and offenses to jiva, to living beings. And of this, the most dangerous is offenses to devotees or Vaishnava Aparadha. Then there is Asat Trishna, which comes from previous pious activities. For example, desire for material objects, desire for heavenly comforts, desire for mystic powers, and desire for liberation. These are desires which are very deep seated in the heart of living entity. And because of these desires, one is not able to practice bhakti properly. And lastly, Hridaya Daurbalyam, or weakness of the heart, which comes from sinful activities, which leads to attachment to objects not related to Krishna, fault finding and enviousness towards other devotees, hypocrisy and deceitfulness, cheating, the audio and the video don't match, and desire for fame. And in addition to this, there are other things which happen while one practice bhakti. One may get some name and fame, and one may become attached to it. So these are also offenses, or you can say anarthas, which arise from bhakti. So these four categories, and one has to be very diligent in pulling out the weeds while cultivating the bhakti lata creeper, so that the weeds don't choke the bhakti, and one has to carefully avoid these anarthas. Now, as long as the anarthas are infested in the heart, one's chanting does not become steady, one's bhajan does not become steady. So these are five enemies of japa, and this can be a thermometer, and devotees can gauge their progress. The first one is called laya, or sleep. Like when one chants or read or hear Krishna Katha, he has a tendency to fall asleep. Second is that there is distraction. The mind is always distracted towards material things. Third is, even if there is no sleep or distraction, one feels indifferent towards chanting of the holy name. He cannot chant for long, he feels bored. And then there is tendency for lust, anger, greed, and pride while one is doing one's bhajan. And then there's thirst for material enjoyment. So, like for example, somebody may be chanting, but he thinks, let me just stop my chanting, watch sports, watch news, watch Facebook, watch YouTube, you know maybe do something which is more materially pleasurable. So these are five enemies of japa. As one's anarthas become less and less in the heart, one will see that he will be able to conquer over these enemies and chant Krishna's name with focus and determination and attention. So the next phase is called the Nishtha Bhajana Kriya. This is called Nishta, meaning steadiness. As anarthas become slackened by the process of bhakti, one begin to notice that his bodily activities, like paying obeisances to the deities, circumambulating the temple, circumambulating the holy places, doing various forms of service, he doesn't feel tired. In fact, he feels energized and happy. Vocally, his japa, his chanting, his kirtan, his Krishna katha, his desire to speak Krishna katha, this becomes steady. And finally, mental steadiness, which means praying to the Lord, remembering the Lord, thinking of him, thinking of his name, his form, his qualities, thinking of different aspects of Krishna, and seeing Krishna everywhere becomes very strong. So this is called Nishtha Bhajan Kriya. Nishtha, or steadiness, can be in the activities of bhakti, called Sakshat Bhakti Vishayini, bodily, vocal, or mental, and Tadanukula Vastu Vishayini, meaning activities which are favorable to bhakti, like development of qualities such as humility, friendliness, forgiveness, mercy, tolerance, compassion. But our acharyas say that these are secondary things. They may even be present in somebody who does not have nishtha in his bhajan, in his bhakti. So we should look for these things: sakshat bhakti vishayini, bodily, vocal, and mental steadiness. Steadiness means there is no break. There's complete steadiness. So it defines, bhakti is defined as ahetukiya pratihata. It is causeless, and it is uninterrupted. So once bhakti becomes uninterrupted, once chanting becomes uninterrupted, once remembrance becomes uninterrupted, but it requires purification of heart. It requires purification of heart, called Anartha Nivritti. Now, when one comes to Nishtita Bhajana Kriya, or steadiness in bhakti, he begins to overcome this state called Kleshagni. Klesha means misery. So, what are the five kleshas which causes misery? First is avidya, or ignorance, subconscious behaviors and desires which are opposed to bhakti. Asmita refers to ego, the sense of I-ness which is separate from Krishna. Third is raga, attachment to desires. Fourth is dvesha, emotions like anger, envy, fear, hatred. It can lead to physical and emotional suffering. Dvesha meaning something which I don't like, and I have a lot of strong attachment to things which I like. So I will have very much opposition to things which I don't like. For example, if somebody insults me or disrespects me or minimizes me, I may feel very angry. This is symptom of dvesha. And abhinivesh, last one is abhinivesh, is attachment to physical body, which may lead to anxiety, insecurity, sense of loss. So these are called the kleshas, or miseries. But by practicing bhakti, these things are destroyed at the very root. And when these things become destroyed, one feels happy. So these are klesha. And Agni means fire. Agni may refer to the fire of one's karma. For example, the karma which one may be facing now, prarabdha karma, aprarabdha karma, karma which is about to be manifest. And bija are the desires in the seed form. Maybe right now the environment and circumstances may be not right, but when they are right, my desires will fructify. And kuta means store stock of karma. This is lifetimes of karma which is stocked up. And because of the force of this karma, I'm not able to engage in bhajan or not able to engage in bhakti. But as I come to nishtha, these two things, klesha and agni, they begin to get destroyed. Your karma begins to get destroyed, and you begin to develop shubdha, or 26 qualities of a devotee. What are they? A devotee is merciful, he's truthful, he's magnanimous, he's without any possessions, he's performed welfare to all, he's peaceful, surrendered to Krishna, steady, moderate, respectful, grave, he's friendly, poetic, expert, and silent, he controls bad habits, eat as much as required, and he's compassionate. So one begins to develop good qualities, and these good qualities begin auspiciousness in the life of a devotee. Um, Another thing we have to also be aware of is our own spiritual qualification for bhakti. And qualification is divided into Kanistha, which is level, you can say, third class devotee, Madhyama Adhikari, second class devotee, and Uttama Adhikari, first class devotee. So from the beginning of Shraddha to the end of Anartha Nivritti is called a Kanistha Adhikari. He's a third class devotee. Madhyam Adhikari is from Nishtha to Asakti, and Uttam Adhikari is on the platform of Bhav, emotion or Prema, love of God. And Adhikar is also classified on the basis of faith, meaning a Kanishta Adhikari would have weak faith, a Madhyam Adhikari would have strong faith, and Uttam Adhikari would have very, very strong faith. Knowledge of scriptures, a Kanishta Adhikari would not have knowledge of scriptures. Um, would not have knowledge of scriptures. A Madhyamadikari would have knowledge of scriptures and he can quote them. And Uttamadikari has both strong faith and knowledge of scriptures, and he can convince others about bhakti through the knowledge of his scriptures. It also is based on chanting. A Kanishtadikari chants intermittently. A Madhyamadikari has this nishtha, he's always chanting. Uttamadikari, by his presence, he can make other people chant. And finally, relationships. A Kanishtadikari or a third class devotee, although he worships Krishna, he does not know how to behave with devotees or with people in general. A Madhyam Adhikari has this qualification called Prema, Maitri, Kripa, Apeksha. Prema means he shows love to God. Maitri, he shows friendship to devotees. Kripa, he shows compassion to the innocent. And Apeksha, he leaves people who are envious alone. And Uttam Adhikari is actually, he's seeing Krishna everywhere. He sees Krishna even in animals or a snake. But if he's preaching, he may come to the level of Madhyam Adhikari to be able to relate to this material world. So, based on faith, knowledge of scriptures, chanting, and relationships, these categories are there. After Nishtha, a state comes which is Ruchi or taste. Taste for the holy name. So it is described in Nectar of Instruction, Updeshamrita, that the holy name may taste bitter in the beginning because somebody who has jaundice, he finds sugar to be bitter. But by continuous chanting, he actually develops a taste for it. He actually begins to like sugar. So similarly, by continually hearing and chanting, one becomes taste in it. Also, Ruchi has three qualities. The devotee desires to make Lord happy with one's service. He desires to exchange affection with the Lord, and he desires to attain Him. If it pleases the Lord, if the Lord does not want him to come back to home, back to Godhead, he's happy in this world. He just wants to serve the Lord and please the Lord and exchange affection with the Lord. Um, Ruchi is characterized by this verse here. The holy name, character, pastime, and activities of Krishna are all sweet like sugar candy. Although the tongue of one afflicted by jaundice cannot taste anything sweet, it is wonderful that simply by carefully chanting the sweet names, a natural relish, so this natural relish is Ruchi, awakens within his tongue, and his disease is gradually destroyed at the root. So Ruchi is also divided into two categories. One which is dependent on external factors. So let's say if the kirtan is nice, or if deities are very properly dressed in a certain way with certain floral arrangements, or if the place is very neat and clean, a devotee may feel the taste. But But so that's dependence on external factors. It's a little weak taste, but a strong taste would not be dependent on external factors, whether the music is good or bad, whether the external environment is good or bad, whether the whatever the circumstances may be, he feels a strong taste. So this is called the much stronger form of ruchi. And after Ruchi, one comes to the stage of Asakti. The main difference between Ruchi and Asakti, in Ruchi, the devotee has attraction and affection for the limbs of devotion like chanting, hearing, reading, deity worship. But in Asakti, actually his attachment is actually to the Lord. He has attachment for the limbs of devotion, but it is graduated to the Lord now. In Nishtha and Ruchi, mind also has to be diverted sometimes to Krishna, but in Asakti, it is natural. When one develops Asakti, one's mind is not deviated from Krishna, and he sees Krishna in everything. And then one comes to the platform of bhava. So asakti in its maturity is called bhava. Bhava refers to a state of a permanent relationship with the Lord. At this stage, he begins to realize his relationship with the Lord, whether he's a servant of the Lord, he's a lover of the Lord, he's a parent of the Lord, he's a friend of the Lord, or he wants to be in a neutral relationship with the Lord. Although it is difficult to get, that is why it's called sudurlabham, and it actually derides the happiness which is found in liberation. So it's called moksha lagudakrit. Bhava is composed of shuddha sattva. The Swarup Shakti of the Lord manifests itself at this stage, which is the combination of Ladini, Samvit, and Sandhini Shakti, the pleasure, the knowledge, and the existence potency of the Lord. Bhava means a permanent relationship with the Lord. Bhava can also be seen in a devotee by characteristic of the presence or absence of 9 symptoms. A person on the stage of bhava would have forbearance. He would be humble, tolerant. He would not waste a moment without Krishna's service. He would be detached from worldly enjoyment. He would have freedom from pride. He would have firm hope that Krishna will be merciful to him. He would have strong eagerness to serve Krishna. He would have attachment for chanting the Lord's holy name. He would have attachment for describing the pastimes of the Lord and affection for places where Lord resides. These 9 things constitute what is called as bhava bhakti, or bhava, or emotion for the Lord. A bhava is further divided into 5 different categories. The sthai bhava is the relationship with the Lord in either neutrality or servitude or friendship or parental affection or conjugal love. And Anubhav, Vibhava, Satviki Bhav, and Vyabhichari Bhav. Anubhav is what actually gives rise to bhava. For example, I hear a wonderful kirtan, or I see the deity very nicely decorated, or even I see Krishna's flute, or I see his peacock feather, or I see the effulgence. I may develop a very deep transcendental emotion in my heart called anubhava. Vibhava means singing, dancing, rolling on the ground, or symptoms like that. These are called vibhava. Then sattvika bhava, which appears because of the shuddha sattva, like crying or tears or perspiration or trembling or throat choking up or goosebumps or pimples or um, perspiration and trembling. These are called sattviki bhavas. And vyabhichari bhavas are 33 in nature. They are called sanchari or vyabhichari. In vyabhichari bhava, because of this rasa and exchange of rasa with the Lord, he may get seizures or epilepsy. He may even die or leave his body. He may foam at the mouth. He may become mad, called divyonmada, and he may exhibit symptoms which are very difficult to understand. They're called vyabhichari bhavas. And so vibhava are the causes that awaken rasa. For example, Krishna's flute, Krishna's peacock feather, clouds, season like spring season or rainy season, they're called vibhava. Anubhava is dancing, rolling on the ground, singing, crying. I may have said it the other way before, but this is how it is. Um, Satviki bhavas are perspiration, horripilation, trembling, symptoms arriving from sattva influence on the body. They're called satviki bhavas. And sanchari bhavas are 33 in number. They refer to epilepsy, death, agitation, stupor, coma, sickness, insanity. This happens in love of God when one is at the stage of bhava. And finally, one attains love of God called Prema Bhakti. It's Sri Krishna Karshini. It actually attracts Sri Krishna to a devotee. And Sandarananda Visheshatma, it gives concentrated bliss. Prema progresses in 6 stages. The first stage is called Sneha, which means affection for the Lord. Second is Mana. One actually feels transcendental anger out of love for the Lord. One may even have a desire to punish the Lord, or to not meet him out of anger. The third is pranaya, or deep love for the Lord. Then there is rag, or deep attachment to the Lord, anurag, intense attachment to the Lord, and finally bhava and mahabhava. These are 2 stages of love, which are the final stages of love. It's even very difficult for a living entity to exhibit these. Um, so now we have to understand that pure love for Krishna is eternally established in the heart of living entities. It is not something to be gained from another source. When the heart is purified by hearing and chanting, this love naturally awakens. So the word is naturally awakened. So somebody may say, how am I going to get to prema, or how am I going to experience, epilepsy and agitation and stupor for Lord? Or even perspiration, horripilation, trembling. Well, if we keep chanting and our heart is purified, these symptoms naturally awaken. And we will get pure love of God, and we will get back to Godhead. So this is the presentation from Madhurya Kadambini on different stages of bhakti. Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. But these symptoms, of course, Krishna only gives you this when you're qualified, when your physical frame or your spirit can handle this. Lord Chaitanya would have frequent bouts of epilepsy. We saw that there was a disciple of Srila Prabhupada called His Holiness Gaur Govinda Maharaj. He was actually speaking at Vyasasan when somebody asked him a question about Radharani and Radha's love and separation from Krishna. And while speaking at the Vyasasan, at the seat of where the speaker sits, he actually experienced death. So death for a devotee is actually simply an experience of rasa, or an exchange of love with the Lord, where he transitions, his soul transition to the spiritual world in complete ecstasy. And then agitation, we see that our acharya like Srila Prabhupada and even Bhakti Tirtha Swami would often cry uncontrollably and would display transcendental agitation in symptoms of bhava. Sickness is something which many devotees experience, like when they visit holy places. When devotees experience visit holy places, they do circumambulation, they see the Lord, they spend some time in the holy places, and they experience high fever, they experience diarrhea, abdominal pain. They may experience very close to leaving their body. And I have seen many devotees, they're actually prepared for it. They are like, you know what, I don't really care about my body, I don't want to go to a doctor, I'm okay with leaving the body. And madness, we see sometimes devotees in kirtans, like Govinda Prabhu, and Vakreshwar Pandit Prabhu. I have seen that also. I have seen transcendental madness. It's actually a symptom of bhava. They are experiencing sanchari bhava, they're experiencing love of God. Most important is to be very much in touch with scriptures. And one should know that ultimately these are just varieties of weeds which are going to choke my devotional creeper if I don't really pay attention to these things. So to be very, very cautious about things, to not seek those things, to, when those things come, just simply pass it on to Guru and Krishna. In the beginning it may be forced, then as a devotee advances, it becomes natural. If somebody touches your feet or pays obeisances to you, or gives you an accolade, you just pass it on to Guru and Srila Prabhupada and to Lord Chaitanya and to Krishna. And there is this transcendental sort of via medium, or a very transparent via medium. A devotee is able to give Krishna to people, and whatever he receives, he's going to give it back to Krishna. So he's like a conduit, or a transparent via media. So one should know that these things are coming. I'm not going to get carried away. Whatever I'm getting, it is only by the grace of Sri Krishna. It is that Krishna is attractive. Because Krishna is attractive and I'm connected to Krishna, I'm also being perceived as attractive. But if my connection with Krishna slackens, if my connection to Krishna becomes weak, these things will go away. And then honor, dishonor, pleasure, pain, respect, disrespect, I'm going to be simply in the whirlpool of material dualities. So instead of that, let me just be fixed and focused on Krishna. Whatever comes, let me give it to Krishna naturally and spontaneously. And let me just give Krishna to others. Let me give bhakti to others. And it's also a matter of etiquette. It's Vaishnava etiquette that devotees pay respects to one another. Why is that? Because by giving respects to one another, or by paying obeisances to one another, we actually share their good karma, their good qualities, their bhakti karma. For example, if I were to pay you an obeisance, Harinamananda Prabhu, I would also attract your good qualities, and I will take up your some of the bhakti karma. You may have done some activities of bhakti in your life, and I am going to get that benefit myself. So in fact, it is actually in my best interest to pay obeisances to a devotee, and to give respects to devotees. It also makes us humble. And it also, I would say, if nothing else, it's a good physical exercise. When you go to a gymnasium, you may do push-ups, or you may do what you call as an activity where you are getting down and getting up. So doing that is actually a great it's good for your physical well-being, it's good for your mental well-being, it puts you in a humble state of mind, and it's great for your spiritual well-being, because you are attracting bhakti karma. And these stages are important, and these stages are not uh, incremental. Sometime a devotee has to work on his faith, shraddha. Sometime he has to work on getting properly, have sadhu sangha, how to associate with devotees properly. Sometimes he has to go back and fix his bhajana kriya. I mean, he may be actually experiencing some symptoms of vibhava, or anubhava, or even satviki bhava, or even sanchari bhava, but he may not have sthai bhava. He may not have his relationship with the Lord, or he may not have these 9 symptoms. So he has to then go back and work on these things, and make sure he's approaching the platform of Nishtita Bhajana Kriya. He's developing Kleshagni, he's developing Shubhada, he's developing good qualities, he's coming to the level of Ruchi. This particular verse from Nectar of Instruction, text 7. And then, he's progressing to Asakti, where he's attached to the Lord, and then Bhava, and then he's developing real qualities of Bhava. So very good question, Prabhu. And actually, scriptures define it very systematically. It is said that generally at the level of Nishtita Bhajana Kriya, majority of the offenses are destroyed. However, some offenses, like for example, aparad, to the holy name, aparad to the jivas, aparad to devotees, they are not destroyed. And usually, as the one progresses from Ruchi Asakti, and when one comes to Bhava is the platform where you would say that the offenses have been destroyed with no possibility of coming back. But Nishtha is the first step, And then bhava is like pervasive disappearance of anarthas.